Hey debaters, we're going to be having a long lecture today, so get ready. You're going to be taking a lot of notes. There will be a quiz at the end. We are going to be discussing Lincoln-Douglas debate format today. This is going to be a kind of intense look at how the debate round is organized and what certain expectations for you are during this round. There are two sides, the affirmative and the negative. The affirmative supports the resolution with reasons why it is the best system. The negative presents a better alternative to the resolution or why the resolution is bad. LD's debate structure works like this. Each side gets 13 minutes of speaking time. However, affirmative gets it broken down into three sections. First, they give the constructive, they give a rebuttal, and then they give the final rebuttal. Negative gets two speeches, but they're both longer. One is 7 minutes and one is 6 minutes. So 13 minutes each, but it's broken out in different ways. We're going to talk about each of these parts of the rounds. The first speech is called the affirmative constructive, or the AC. It is 6 minutes to lay out the case, including definitions and all contentions. Second, we have a cross-examination by neg to ask AF any questions about the case. Now that's kind of a fun place of the speech. Third part is the negative construction, the NC. That's 7 minutes to lay out neg's case, including definitions and contentions, and to attack AF's case. Now that's kind of, you have to figure out where you're going to divide your time on that. Then we have a cross-examination where AF gets to ask neg questions about their case. That lasts for another 3 minutes. Then we have the first of AF rebuttal, the 1AR. It's 4 minutes to support your own case and attack neg's case. It is also to respond to attacks on your case. Once again, this is a big time management thing, and you got to be able to think fast and take really good notes so you can respond to everything that they said. The sixth speech is the neg rebuttal. Now, this is the neg's only other time to speak. They have to respond to attacks on their own case. They have to reply to AF's rebuttal supporting their own case, and they have to sum up the round with key voting issues. Finally, we have the final presentation, which is the second AF rebuttal, the 2AR. It is 3 minutes to respond to neg's attacks, restate the case, and or present key voting issues. So let's start right from the very beginning. The AF constructive is 6 minutes long, wherein AF presents her case. It usually starts with the statement, I agree with the resolution. It provides any definitions of questionable words in the resolution. Now, they have to be from reliable sources. You can't just say, I decided that the word democracy means this. No, no, no. That's not how this works. You have to use real definitions from citable sources. Then you introduce the value. Now, what's a value in a case? A value is the most important thing that you think needs to be protected or what's ideal in this world. Most of our cases have to do, most of our resolutions have to do with what we do with government. How do we run the world? Government is based on the idea that we are groups of people or we are individuals that might harm each other. Therefore, the most important thing that a government can do is justice. Justice is the most common value in Lincoln-Douglas debate. Whether or not it's the right one is another question. You're going to get to figure that out. When you introduce your value, you say today's value is, or today's value to be preferred is, or I value, my value is. Lots of different ways to do it, but you need to make it very clear to the judge what the value is. If your judge doesn't understand your value, you are already in deep trouble. So make it very clear. Now, I want to remind you, you are going to be reading the speech. So make sure that you've got that statement very clear right at the beginning. Next, you have to link the value to the resolution. I'm valuing justice because in our society, a just government is one that represents all people. Something like that. You have to figure out what the resolution is and what the value is, and how do you link the two. Then you introduce the value criterion, and you make this just as clear as you did the value. My value criterion is, we see the value upheld by the value criterion, or in order to see the value achieved, we use the value criterion. Some of them sound a little debate speaky. Be as clear as you want to be, or be as ornate as you want to be. It's fine with me. The next thing you put out is your contentions, and you actually say it that way. Contention 1. And then you use a tag or a title to introduce the idea. Contention 1, freedom of choice. Now, a contention is composed of a claim, a warrant, evidence, and an impact. Now, a claim is a statement you want the judge to believe. This is a statement that you believe to be true. You then state a link from your claim to the resolution. Why is this important? That's called a warrant. That's very important in debate, because anybody can come along and say, well, you haven't shown how your claim relates to the resolution. You've got to do that here. Add any evidence that and explain why it applies in this case. You need to cite your sources as well. If you're going, you might hear somebody talking about this card or evidence from. This is information or evidence that they've gotten from a particular source, and they will refer to it as that card or according to and that name through the rest of the round. Be prepared for that. I know a lot of people don't return to citation names according to the author. They tend to stick with contentions. Either way is fine. Lay out the impacts of why the change would be bad. Now, remember, we're still talking about the aft constructive here. This is the resolution. You have to protect the resolution. Changing it has an impact. What are those negative impacts? Conclude your first contention with a link back to the value criterion and the value. Why does this contention support the value criterion, and how does it support the value? When you're writing these things, you will have a kind of structure that's very logical. A then B, if A then B, if B then C, A equals C is the kind of logic we're going to be looking at here. Repeat this with contentions 2 and 3, or with whatever subpoints. Just always be showing how it relates back to the resolution and supports your value. End the case with, Judge, this is why we must uphold the resolution. I stand ready for cross-examination. Every speaker has a total of 4 minutes per round of prep time. Now, that time can be used in any way they want to use it. They can break it down and say, I would like a minute, or run the clock, or I want 15 seconds. During that time, they can use it any way they want. It is given upon demand between speeches. You don't interrupt your speech and say, oh, Judge, I'd like to take a minute of prep right now, because that's not how that works. Prep time should be timed by the debater. It might be timed by the judge, but let me give you a little hint. Count it down. Don't set a timer that says, okay, I've taken 1 minute and 32 seconds. How much more time do I have left? That's a really bad way to do it. So keep track of your time on your own flow, indicating how much time you have remaining in your prep. During this time, you want to note questions that you want to address, flaws in their case or framework, any evidence you want to see. That's the primary use of prep time. Some people just run it out because they don't have anything else to do with themselves. I think that that's kind of silly. If you're not going to do anything with your time, don't use it. Cross-examination. Okay, this is where debates become arguments, and this is where the fun begins. The first cross-examination is neg asking AF questions, and they question everything. Now, judges don't flow, or they're not expected to flow cross-ex. That's not part of the debate. This is where you, as a debater, get to ask the other debater to clarify things. Are you unclear about definitions? Do you understand their value and the definition of their value? Do you understand their value criterion? If you don't, you need to ask for these things. Even if you do, you need to say, I understand your value is X and your value criterion is Y. Is that correct? That's important. The judge wants to know that you're that you're questioning everything on the flow. Ask why they think their value is most important if you don't have the same value. Ask leading questions that will support your framework later on. Now, when you get to contentions, clarify any contention tags that you don't have noted on your flow. Now, some people read these things so fast that it's easy to get confused. Cross-examination is where you get to clarify these things. If you have any questions about their evidence, ask to see it. The judge will take care of that between the speeches, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. You can also use this time, neg, to set up questions or set up your case by asking leading questions. Would you agree? And sometimes would you agree leads to a statement that shows that your value is more important than theirs is, or your value criterion helps the judge understand things better. That's a really nice way. In 3 minutes, you've got to do all this stuff to get yourself set up. Now let's just kind of look at what you need to be doing here. Do you need prep time? Decide if you do or not. Some debaters like to take it at this point. Some don't. Maybe they're ready. Figure it out. How do you use your case to attack AF? If you have contentions that answer AF, you are in a sweet place. That doesn't frequently happen, but it's a lovely thought. Then when you're ready to start speaking, you stand up and you say to the judge, Judge, I'd like to give you an off-time roadmap. That means the clock hasn't started, but you're signposting to the judge how you intend to go. This makes it easier for the judge to flow. They really appreciate this. When you don't give an off-time roadmap, they might even ask you for one. Tell the judge in what order you intend to speak. First, I will present my case, then I will address AF's case. Or you can flip it around. Neither one is better than the other. Make sure, however, that you tell the judge what you're doing. Then present your case. Don't use too much time on your case because then you won't be able to attack AF. Or if you're going to start with your attack on AF's case, don't use too much time or you won't be able to produce your case. It's up to you. When you are attacking their case, when you're attacking AF case, follow the flow. You can show flaws in their framework and then their contentions, but make sure you do it in that order. Show how their framework might better support your side. Explain where their case fails. That's the way that you attack, but make sure you follow the flow. Negative constructive usually starts with the statement, I disagree with the resolution. And you provide any definitions of questionable words in the resolution, especially if you disagree with AF's definitions. Make sure you cite your sources. Introduce your value. Today's value is, today's value to be preferred is, or I value. If you are valuing the same thing, make sure you still define it because the definitions of the values might be different. If you're using one version might be Socrates' definition of justice versus John Rawls' version of justice. Those are very different things, and they will change the tenor of the debate. Therefore, make sure you define your value. Explain the link between the value and the resolution. Be very clear. If A, then B. If B, then C. Then A equals C. It's got to be that logical. Introduce your value criterion. Again, be very precise. My value criterion is, we see the value upheld by the value criterion. In order to see the value achieved, we use the value criterion. Be specific. Contention 1, you actually say that. Use a tag or title to introduce the idea, such as Contention 1, freedom of choice. State your claim. Now, and state the link from your claim to the resolution. If you can put that all into one sentence, that's sweet because it maximizes your time. Constructive has to be very concise in how they use their time. Explain your evidence and why it applies, and lay out the impacts about why the change would be good, or alternatively, why remaining the way the resolution is bad. However you are working your contentions, either of those is fine. Conclude contention 1 with link back to the value criterion and then back to the value. Why this contention demonstrates the value criterion and supports the value. Repeat with contentions 2 and 3. Now, you rarely get to a third contention in a negative constructive because you have to attack the other case. Now, tell the judge you will now address the affirmative case. Say those words. I will now address the affirmative case. Attack the framework. Start from the very beginning, go with the flow. Attack the framework. If the values are the same and using the same definitions, then recognize that and move on. Then look at the value criterion. Why is theirs worse than yours? Why is yours better? Make it very clear. Attack the framework. What are the links between the value and the value criterion? Do they actually relate to the resolution? Now that's the kind of debate I like to hear the best. A lot of judges are more particular in that they prefer a contentional debate. That's up to the judge. And you can certainly ask the judge before the round starts, what's your preference? But you want to make sure that you're going down the flow and you're attacking things or addressing things in order. Now, when you get to the contentions, you say, in their contention 1, they state this, but I have evidence, or they claim this, but you need to have evidence and you need to understand the opposition's perspective so you can be prepared for it. The negative has a strong opportunity because they've got more time here, so you can address the case very thoroughly if you're prepared. Use your contentions to attack theirs if you can. That is such a nice, sweet way, because then you can just say, Judge, look at my contention 2, and you see that I have negated their contention 1 because my evidence is stronger than theirs, whatever. Use all your time until the timer goes off. Now, this is really hard for new debaters to use all your time, but you really want to make an effort to use all your time. And you end, when the buzzer goes off, with, Judge, this is why we cannot uphold the resolution. I stand ready for cross-examination. Cross-ex and question everything. Now, this is AF asking neg questions. And once again, it's a lot of the same things. Questions about unclear definitions, reviewing values and value criterion. Ask them why they think their value is most important. Ask leading questions that will support your framework. Set up your case that way. Make sure that you understand all the contentions. Question any evidence cited if you are unfamiliar with it. You can't ask to see it. Now let's talk about asking for evidence. A judge will determine how to handle the request based on their own preference. I personally will tell the other team that they have to produce the evidence in such a way that the other people that the request can be seen. Now, if they come in with a computer, I'm going to ask them before the round starts that they understand they're going to be handing their computer to somebody else. Most people coming in accept that that's their risk. We don't want to destroy anybody's computer, so we might try to find a way to minimize that risk, but it is your risk if you only have your evidence on a computer. Some people print it out and keep it in a notebook. That's up to you. Some people have hundreds of pages printed out and they handed the notebook to the person and said, here's my evidence. I don't think that's fair, and I penalize people by giving them lower points in speaker points, which we'll talk about at the end of the round. Or if they take too much time, I don't start the clock for prep time until the evidence is provided. So if you're taking a lot of time to get evidence to your opposition, you're actually giving your opposition more time to prep because they're not wasting this time waiting for you to put out the piece of paper. You must produce evidence upon demand in a format that the opposition can see it. If you fail to produce evidence, it is a reason for the judge to give the win to the other side. Don't give the judge a reason to pick them up. Provide the evidence. If you don't have the evidence with you, you are in trouble. The next speech is the affirmative rebuttal. It's called the 1AR. It is 4 minutes long. Now this is fast. 4 minutes just flies by. So let's look at 4 things to consider first. Do you need prep time? While you've been flowing the negative's case, their case and their attacks on you, you should be noting what do you want to answer and how do you want to answer it. Failure to respond to an attack on your case is seen as a concession, and you don't get to come back and explain it later in your second affirmative rebuttal. You must answer it now in some way. Before you start your speech, once again, give an off-time roadmap. Tell the judge how you want to go through this speech. Doesn't matter if you support your own case or attack theirs first, whatever. It's what you prefer. Just make sure you tell them. It is important that you follow the flow. Don't jump around. Now, what happens frequently in the 1AR is that the affirmative will talk about the value criterion and the value framework debate, theirs versus the opposition's. That's following the flow, and that is fine. You know, I prefer this, they prefer that. This is why mine is more important. You're addressing theirs at the top of the argument. That's really important. You're following the flow, which starts with framework and then goes to contentions. If you want to combine several arguments together, you can tell the judge you are grouping their contentions if you have one answer to all of them. You might get lucky with that. What's really cool is if you have your contention answer theirs. Now, if they attack your contention and you've still got more evidence, bring it, baby, but don't bring any new arguments. You cannot introduce new arguments at this point in the round. You may introduce more evidence. So if you make a claim and then you have evidence in the first speech, you may bring new evidence in the second speech. You can point out logical fallacies, and you can point out debate protocol failures such as a genetic fallacy, logical fallacies. You could point out failure to produce evidence, dropped arguments, failure to support their own, or to attack yours. These are really important during this time. So this is how you, from top to bottom with the arrows, first affirmative rebuttal will work. First, you reassert your own framework. Restate your value and your value criterion if it has been attacked. If it was not, make sure the judge knows that they didn't attack it. That becomes a key voting issue later in the debate. Review the attacks on your case. Explain to the attacks have no value. They either failed to disprove or they were untrue. There was a logical fallacy. They failed to attack. Provide additional evidence for your case at this point in time. Now you move on to attack their framework and their contentions. Prove why their value is less valuable with impacts. Prove how their value criterion is less effective to measure the round. Explain to the judge why your framework is more important, and remind the judge what you just said at the beginning of your first AR. If you are talking about the two frameworks side by side, just mention that I spoke about their framework already. Attack their contentions why you think they aren't important, don't have good links, or otherwise failed to support the framework. Go back to the resolution. Do they honestly answer the resolution? If they don't, point it out. This is grouping and turning are techniques where you attack multiple contentions at one time. Be specific that you are saying, I'm attacking their AC1 or their contention 1 and their contention 3. Both of these can be answered with whatever. Make sure that you name them so the judge knows that you answered these and you didn't drop them. If you can see a way to make their arguments, their value, or their value criterion support your case, you can turn them to what's called your side of the flow. The judges will not automatically turn a case to your side without clear indication from you. These will be part of the key voting issues at the end of your speech, final speech. Now, I've talked about flowing the round. Flowing the round is to follow the round in a certain format. First, we start with the framework debate, which is the value and the value criterion. These are the things by which a judge in Lincoln Douglas is expected to judge this round. Then we go to the contention debates. The contentions, the claims, evidence, warrants, impacts. Did they use logical and rational arguments? Were there logical fallacies? Were they using emotion rather than logic? This is where you want to see these things noted, and then you can attack them later on. Make sure that you also notice debate techniques, especially failures. If there are dropped arguments or dropped attacks, we say those flow through the round. That means they have not done anything with them, so that must be valued. It must be recognized that I've won this, because in debate, if you don't answer it, it is assumed that you are not going to argue it anymore, and you've lost that value or that attack or that argument. Logical fallacies are a debate technique failure. Failure to provide evidence. Now make sure, if you are doing your first affirmative rebuttal, that you mention all of these things, because if you drop these now, you can't bring them up later on in the debate. So it's all about keeping consistent through and keeping it in front of the judge. What have they done right? What have you done right? And what have they done wrong? In the negative rebuttal, there is 6 minutes. Again, let's look at how this should work. Use your prep time. Failure to respond to an attack or failure to continue your arguments is seen as a problem. It's a concession of the point. You can't come back to it. So make sure that you answer absolutely everything you've got time to answer. Off-time roadmap. Tell the judge how to proceed. Now, you can continue to support, and you should support your own case and attack theirs. Or you can support your own case and then do what's called a crystallization, which is an overall summary of the important points. If they have failed to do something that's critically important in the debate, a crystallization can be a fast way of putting that all together, or you can present what are called key voting issues. Again, follow the flow. You want to follow it in the right way. Judges have a really hard time bouncing around, and so do you when they're presenting, when your opponent are not following the flow. So follow your flow. You may not introduce new arguments at this point in the round. Just as the affirmative can't introduce any more arguments, we can, or contentions, we can't, however, we can't introduce new evidence. Now, looking at how this flows for the negative rebuttal, you reassert your own framework. You review attacks on your case. That should be a significant part, but by no means not the whole. If that goes more than 2.5 minutes, you're probably going to end up in trouble. Attack their framework and their contentions. Now, if you decide to attack the framework while you're reasserting your framework, remind the judge that you did that. The framework and the contention argument need to be worked together, especially in this argument. You need to attack them very carefully and very precisely. Mention any groups or turns that you've done, and then move into the key voting issues. Key voting issues should probably be the last 2 minutes of your negative rebuttal. Now, your second affirmative rebuttal is 3 minutes long. Again, use your prep time wisely. Give an off-time roadmap. Again, you can choose to crystallize the round, or you can choose key voting issues. Follow your flow. Don't introduce new arguments, and then list the key voting issues that are this is a list of the critical voting issues for the judge to determine the winner of the round. You can number them, or you can just say the next KVI is, I would prefer the next KVI because I'm writing so much and thinking that I missed one or that they skipped a number freaks me out as a judge. So just say the next KVI. But be very specific with each one with a tagline, such as the first KVI is the framework debate. The second KVI is contention one. The third KVI is that they dropped an argument. That's all you need to say. The key voting issues can be framed up or summed up in this. Where does their framework fail? Why does it fail? Why did yours win? What's the contention debate? Did you answer all their points or did you disprove them? Were there debate technique failures that you need to bring in? Dropped arguments or attacks? Introduce new argument in the rebuttal? Were there logical fallacies? Did they fail to provide evidence? The second affirmative rebuttal reasserts framework and provides a summary of the case. Why did you win the round? Can you put it together into one sentence? That's great, because you can then move into attacking their framework and their contentions in the KVIs. Summarize the round with key voting issues. List them in flow order. List each one separately. Framework debate. My framework is better than his because. KVI. His framework fails because. Now see, the framework debate is separate from why his framework fails. Those are two different voting issues to the judge. Contentions or debate technique failures. That's all part of this. At the end of the round, be polite and thank the other debater for a good round, even if you hate their guts. Just shake hands with them and smile. Shake hands with the judge. Now, apparently ill people are excused from this. Judges hate shaking hands with sick people. So you don't have to if you don't want to. We recommend hand sanitizer after every round. Clean up your stuff and get out quickly. Ask the judge if they prefer the door to be open or closed and get out. They're not going to want to talk to you after the round. They can't talk to you. And the judge has to finish their copy of the ballot so it can get turned in. The longer the judges take, the longer it takes to finish the debates. So we want to get that done quickly. When you're watching me in a debate round as a judge, you mostly see the top of my head or my hat. You're not going to see my face because I'm writing down so much stuff. I might look up during cross-ex, but I'm going to try to be as attentive to my ballot as I am to you. I need to fill in that ballot while you are speaking. So please don't get upset with me if I'm not looking in you in the eye while you're saying your most important points. I'm supposed to be writing them down to make sure that I understand what your points are. I will shake your hands. I will ask you to get out and close the door so that I can finish up my tasks. Do you have any questions about what we've talked about? If you do, send them to me at speechteacher.kim.kraj@gmail.com or save them for the class. And don't forget to test over this material. You're going to find the link at rockspeechclass.net. Thanks so much. We'll be talking again soon.